Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas, always so happy to welcome State Representative Kirk Schuring to our community. Good morning.
Good morning, Susie.
You know, your name has been in the news quite a bit as you were the interim speaker for quite some time. For how long did you serve as interim?
Just about 2 months.
Okay, probably long enough in your estimation, right?
It was quite an ordeal, let me tell you.
Yes.
Historic, some of the stuff that happened during that 2-month period.
And that's why I invited you on to try and help explain it all to us. Ron Ponder did a very cool article about you, just really commending you on your leadership through that amazing time. So I'm going to let you tell the story. Why was this so unusual, Kirk?
Well, first of all, our speaker, Cliff Rosenberger, resigned on the 10th of April amidst an FBI inquiry, and he felt that it would be best for him to leave because he had personal expenses he had to incur because of legal fees. So he, on the 10th of April, submitted his resignation, effective May 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is when it gets interesting, because I presided over the session of the General Assembly, the session of the House on the 11th of April, because as Speaker Pro Tempore is Latin for temporary speaker, and under our House rules it says in the absence of the Speaker pro tempore assumes all the rights, privileges, responsibilities, and duties of the Speaker. So I presided over that very next session day, the day after he resigned, and we did our legislative work. And then the next day, on the 12th, former Speaker Rosenberger decided to make his resignation effective immediately, and that's when it started to get interesting, because there was somebody who said, well, the Speaker is no longer absent, he is vacant. And then we have our regular set of rules that we abide by in the House. We adopt them every 2 years. Those are the primary rules. But our clerk, because of this nuance of was the Speaker absent or was he actually vacant, went to a set of secondary rules. These rules were written by a gentleman by the name of Hughes back in the late 1920s, published in the 1930s. There's only 3 state legislatures in the entire United States that use Hughes as their secondary rules. And the reason I bring that up, because under the Hughes secondary rules, it says that the House cannot convene a legislative session to do bills on the floor until the House elects a new Speaker.
Wow. Help me understand the difference between absent and vacant, because I think in my mind those are similar words.
In most people's minds that it is very similar, and that's where we got into what I called high nuance, where we were getting into parsing of words. Here, let me just put it to you this way: we have in our United States Constitution, in our state constitution, and in most forms of government, there's a succession plan in the event that the chief officer can no longer serve, either because of an illness, resignation, death. Case in point, the President of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen all throughout our history where the President, for whatever reason, has not been able to fulfill his term, and as a result, the Vice President took over immediately.
Yes.
The tragic assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1964. I remember the pictures of LBJ being sworn in on Air Force One.
Yes, and I understand they didn't even really have to do that he became president immediately. They didn't even have to do the swearing in, but he did that for the photo, maybe to calm everyone down, just to see someone's in charge.
Yes, I think you're right. And so there is just a natural succession when the chief officer no longer can serve. And that's where, again, what we did was, when we got into this, it really created a quagmire, because the backstory on this is there's 2 titans who are running for Speaker for next session of the General Assembly, which will convene on the 1st of January. 2019. It's the former Speaker, Larry Householder, and now current Speaker, Ryan Smith. So, one side wanted to get that Speaker's election over with right away, and the other side wanted to stall it. And I was right in the middle of it all. And so I'm a process person. I believe that you need to communicate and you need to listen to those who you're leading. So upon the resignation of Speaker Rosenberger, I took 3 or 4 days to talk to all the other 64 members of the House Majority Caucus. Talked to every one of them individually, got a pulse for what they wanted, whether or not they wanted to have a Speaker's election before the May 8th primary or after the May 8th primary. And at that point in time, it was overwhelming that they all wanted to wait until after the May 8th primary.
Right.
So that was on May 8th. And then 1 week after that, we had our caucus for the purpose of nominating our person that we wanted to be our speaker. And when we convened that caucus, and I'm the dean of the caucus. I'm also the chair of the caucus. So again, I had all the fun of trying to keep all that in order. But we had an orderly session of our caucus where there were 3 people who were nominated, and Ryan Smith was able to garner over 70% of the votes. Traditionally, when you have a number of people vying for a leadership position within your caucus, when there is a nomination or when someone wins the nomination, then the other, in a magnanimous way, offer a motion to accept the nomination by acclamation, which means unanimously.
Mm-hmm.
And so we followed tradition that evening of the 15th of May, Tuesday night, and it was not accepted. So
help me understand why it was not accepted, because if
because we're breaking with tradition. You're seeing stuff that's why I've said this is historic, because usually the caucus will coalesce around the nominee, but keep in mind, so you had these factions. You had a pro-Householder faction, you had the pro-Smith faction, and so there was not, the coalescing that we normally would have seen. And so I finally said to everyone, I said, okay, well, here's the way it works. If we're going to be the majority caucus in a 99-member House, that means we must have, at minimum, 50 votes. And I said, in addition to that, whoever is going to be Speaker and has to preside over managing the House on the days we have a floor session, that person needs to have the confidence that he or she would be able to sustain the rule of the chair in the event that something came up and a rule was challenged. And that does happen every once in a while. So I asked the members who could not stand with our nominee to stand up. So if you can't stand with him on the floor the day of the election, stand up now and show yourself.
Oh, that's
so
good.
We know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so 18 of our members stood up, which meant our nominee had 47 votes. He was only 3 votes away from 50. And so I thought for sure that he was going to be able to peel off another 3 votes.
Sure.
But he wasn't, and so this went on and on and on. And the 50 vote, it's an unwritten rule, but it's a time-honored tradition.
Yes.
That again, that's just, if you're going to be the majority caucus, that means you at minimum must muster 50 votes out of a 99-member chamber. Then what made it even more interesting is that the minority caucus decided to break with tradition, and they said, we're not going to vote for the majority caucus nominee either. So, so it really started to get more complicated, and it just kept on compounding. Finally, and this was going on for weeks, I finally said, look, I've been around for a long time. That 50-vote standard is not something that I just pulled out of the thin air. It's something that's been around ever since I've been a member, and that's been 25 years, and even long before that. But I said, I'm going to give all the members, Republicans and Democrats, a chance to decide how they want to proceed. So I said, either we can have the speaker election, or we can make a slight change to the rules where I could just preside over session and make sure that, we're getting our legislative work done, allow others to deal with the political backbiting that was going on, but I would take care of the legislative side of the equation. And as Speaker Pro Tem, as the interim speaker, we could still have session and get things done.
Let me stop you right there, Jay. If I can interrupt just for 1 second, I want you to know,
sure.
I thought this was a huge compliment because something was taking place on June 6th. And I was sitting at a luncheon with a gal who is a very staunch Democrat, Kirk, and we were talking about, this, what was going on and everything, and the vote about to take place and so forth, and the decision about to be made. And she said, why can't Kirk Schering, who's been doing a great job as interim, just keep going? And so there you go. There's a Democrat saying that, and certainly the Republicans felt that way. So answer for us why you could not.
Well, it goes back to that rule written by Hughes. Rule, and by the way, we don't even have a hard copy of that rule book. Our Legislative Service Commission, it's so archaic that no one, we think there might only be one or two actually hard copy documents in book form of this thing. But it goes back to Hughes, who said, you can't convene a session without electing a speaker. So, and by the way, even David Leland, who was a former Ohio Democratic Party chair, who's a member of the House, said, hey, I got the simple solution. Just let Representative Schering continue to do it. So, so it was because of these what I consider to be antiquated rules. We could not proceed. So it came down to that date you just stated, the 6th of June. And under a law that was enacted, now this is where it really gets interesting, a law that was enacted in 1853. Wow. It says when you conduct a speaker election and there's more than one nominee, you must go through 10 ballots. If you can't get to a majority of the members with 10 separate ballots, then you can elect the speaker by plurality on the 11th ballot. Now, to even make it more complicated, when you have multiple candidates, nominees, I should say, you have to use the Latin term viva voce, which means every member will be called individually, and they have to stand at their desk and then acknowledge to the chamber as a whole who they support for their speaker. So we had to go through that on the 6th of January through 10 full roll call votes.
And you went through you went through 10.
Yeah, well, it was written in 1853. 1853. And here's the rest of it, Susie. We went through all 10, and that was the first time that law, written in 1853, first time in 165 years that was actually utilized to its fullest extent.
That's amazing.
It took the 11th ballot to get Ryan Smith, now Speaker Ryan Smith, to the point where he was able to garner 42 votes out of the, at that time, 91 members were present. So he got 42 votes out of 91 members, and that was a plurality, and we were able to elect him as our speaker, and he now presides over our chamber. And we've had several session days since then, so things are moving along as normal now. But I'll tell you, it was quite an ordeal, and frankly, I used my Christian faith to carry me through it.
Yeah.
I learned that if you have faith, you can persevere, and you can go through a lot of trials and tribulations. You just got to have faith and give it to the Lord.
Yes.
And that's what has always enabled me to get through, again, the various challenges I've had in my life.
Yes.
And it certainly served me well during this 2-month period where I was interim speaker.
This was just amazing. It's quite a story. We're going to need to take a short break, but we'll be back with State Representative Kirk Schuring after these words. You're listening to Our Community.